Hey, hello. Welcome to Game Audio Hour, episode 144. Wow, that's a really gross number there. Anyways, this is a weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest technologies, project experiences to audio secrets. Here is where you'll find in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. I am not Kyle. I'm Vince, back from my honeymoon. I am married. It's kind of cool. And
is that a black ring?
Yes, it is a black ring.
That's incredible. What kind of metal is that?
It's actually two materials. On the inside, it is a silver ring. On the outside, it's carbon fiber. So
wow.
a nice blend of old and new. You know, classic
That's
and
amazing.
Modern. It's pretty cool.
Fantastic.
I like it. It feels nice, and it doesn't get in the way of me playing the piano or the iwi or whatever. So I think that's all we need to say about that.
Looks killer.
Yeah. So, hey, guys. Hey, Alex. How are you doing over there in Japan? You're still in Japan, right?
Yes, I'm still in Japan, and I'm not really enjoying the monsoon. It's a funny word, isn't it? Monsoon. Like why that must be like typhoon. It must be a sort of a romanization of one of the Asian language words, I guess. But it's very hot. It's very sweaty. There are mushrooms growing on my scalp. I've got like blue cheese behind my ears. There's moss everywhere. No, it's not very pleasant.
Wow.
But I'm okay. Just very sweaty.
That sounds really scary.
Yeah, I just turned all of you guys off for ever talking to me ever again, didn't I? Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm actually thinking about that. What is that movie? What's that horror movie? The worst horror movie ever, where the monsters are made out of plants. When you're talking about moss growing everywhere, I'm just imagining you now as this sort of weird moss, lichen plant creature. Not lichen like a werewolf, but lichen, L-I-C-H-E-N, and it's just really funny to me right now.
That's basically sums it up. Yes, it's not very pleasant, the Northeast Asian summer. Well, I guess it depends on your point of view. One good thing about humidity is that all you need is a fan. Like an air conditioner it helps dry things off, but a fan, because you get so sweaty, so a fan just cools you down very well. So ceiling fans are really good, but in Japan, they don't really have ceiling fans because the ceilings are generally very low. So, because you sit on the floor, like I'm sitting on the floor at the moment, but you don't want to. You stretch up and you cut your hands off on a ceiling fan.
Yeah.
That's not great. Anyway, I'm very well, thank you, Vince.
Awesome. Yeah, Chase, you don't have to worry about ceiling fans cutting off your hands.
No, but I wish I did, because just like Alex over there is dealing with heat, I am dealing with heat in this room. It's just packing heat in, and I have a fan on the floor, and it's not doing anything, and it is humid, and I'm getting mosquito bites. And it's just like,
oh no.
Algae and like screen things I put up for the door to let some airflow in. But it's pretty hot here in Los Angeles, guys, so like let's cool it down a bit. It's 93. I'm not very happy. I can't turn on the computer because then I'll melt. Thanks.
I feel you on that. It's amazing how many places in Los Angeles think, well, it's totally okay not to have air conditioning. That's I mean, I can understand sometimes it's great in November and December, January, and fully half the year. But in a place where temperatures can reach 100 degrees, air conditioning is very far from the standard. So
yep. There's no air conditioning in the house, no air conditioning in this room that I'm in, the garage, and life is hot. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
You know what it is? I think the reason why air conditioning is not a standard in Los Angeles homes is to encourage you to go to your employer and bask in the wonders of air conditioning while you're working a few extra hours on whatever it is that you need to work on.
Funny, I could have swore you were going to say was to go to your employers and beg for a day off to the beach, because since we live in California, because that's where everybody goes when it's hot. I thought you were going to say that, but that's just as good.
The beach. It's funny. I actually work just about 4 miles away from the beach here in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
No, I have not been to the beach in years. I'm just okay. Just got to work. Got to keep on doing stuff. It's fun times.
Is it very is it very humid in San Francisco?
Oh, San
It's not,
Francisco
is
can
it?
be. It can be humid, actually. I mean, I've never actually lived there, but the few times that I've been up there in July and August, it can be pretty bad.
Because I have
In San Jose.
this theory that all the people, I guess the engineers in the world who come up with devices like this, they do that in environments where it's not very humid. Because if you have a sweaty, sticky finger, have you ever tried dragging something on one of these? It's
Oh man.
And so I'm
It's
using
nasty.
like this MacBook Pro trackpad, and I love this trackpad, but like when it gets humid, it's like, oh man, it's like anything that involves dragging is just painful. Anyway, let's say we talk about game audio, chaps.
Yeah, game audio. There's a lot of fun happening in game audio. Actually, there were a couple of questions that I guess happened in the last few weeks when I wasn't here. So I'm actually kind of excited to talk about some things, having not been on this podcast for a while. So let's see. So one of these questions, actually, I think this comes from Jazeria.
Yeah.
How is it working in an iterative process on game audio when you are just by all your lonesome? You can't really bounce things off of an audio team. How do you go about making sure that what you're working on actually sounds good?
Great question. That's a great question. Chase, you want to go first, or Vince, you want to?
Yeah,
feel
it's
back?
actually it was you guys.
Oh, wait a minute. Was it? Oh, wait a minute. Us guys.
Avid viewer, Chase.
I snuck that one in there.
Oh, okay. I misread. I think I put his name to a different question. So we were asking that. And that is actually a really tough thing, honestly. Although I feel like I've forgotten just how tough it is, mostly because I spent so long working by myself. I mean, even over here at that game company where we do care a lot about audio, for most of my tenure here, I've been working by myself as both the music composer and the lead sound designer. And it wasn't until recently, just this last year, that we finally got another sound designer. And yes, it is really fun to bounce those ideas off of him and delegate work and work with each other and collaborate on some things and have fun actually exploiting our particular our tool sets and skill sets in order to make the best thing for the best particular sound. But even without that, I actually did spend a lot of time chatting with other people outside of work. So over here, we will actually talk to people, friends and family, and not just talk to them, show them the game in progress. And hey, what do you think about this design? What do you think about this particular level or character or what have you? And maybe even bring them in on playtests. Just like game audio, all the other aspects of the game do need that outside perspective. So I'm going to take advantage of that as well whenever they come by. They're not explicitly coming by to provide criticism or commentary on the game audio, but they are there for the game itself, and I'm going to take advantage of that. Even if that doesn't happen, I do have a couple of people that I'll throw things at. Actually, I was recently throwing a couple of bits of music over at Michael's general direction, just talking about, hey, what do you think about this orchestration here? Because he's particularly good at that. And yeah, I guess there's technically things where you're asking for the friend DA. But hey, it's really useful. It's not just a matter of making sure that the work is as good as it could be, but also for your own sanity, making sure that you know where you are, being able to center yourself, even in a production process that can be a little bit crazy that you are trying to wrangle. So, oh man, doing the best you can, being able to rely on your external resources like that, relying on your friends and family and colleagues.
Interesting.
What do you guys think?
I think that the advice of your colleagues, the opinions of your colleagues, is a great sort of surrogate. For other audio people to talk to, but you need to develop a translation engine for every specific colleague that you have. What I mean by that is that every person who's not necessarily musical, not necessarily very interested in audio or game music or game sound, they will approach being asked, what do you think of this sound, or what do you think of this music? They approach it in a different way, and there's definitely stuff to be had from the opinions of people who aren't very familiar with music or sound. That's why you can't take the advice that you get at face value often. Like, for example, it sounds too harsh, for example, right? It's too harsh. Maybe you're thinking, well, it should be harsh because I want the player to feel panic and I want them to feel tension or something, right? So the advice that you may get, it's too harsh, may not be specifically useful just literally, but if you're able to develop like a translation engine for every colleague, where this guy tends to respond with very vague ideas about, ambience and atmosphere. This person really loves rock music, so anything that I play to this person that's not rock music, they're not really going to get into, things like that. If you're able to sort of parse people's feedback from your direct colleagues, I found that to be just as useful as having, another audio person to throw something at and actually getting specific advice, like, oh, you need to, reduce 700 hertz by 2 dB, or, you need to do this or do that. Getting this sort of, it's a bit cruel to say it, but I suppose amateur is the word I guess we could use. It's justified to use here, but sort of that kind of specifically professional opinion it can be just really useful. Just have to know how to sort of parse it and approach it. That's all.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was thinking
sometimes
that,
oh no, go on, Chase.
I was thinking that if your colleagues are busy, right, like you, Vince or Alex, and you do want to rely on their opinion, their awesome, professionalism, opinion, and maybe you have like a fallback of friends or colleagues that maybe you can ask, and maybe they're busy. What do you do then? And I feel like I've been in that situation multiple times. And so I'm wondering workarounds for that, as opposed to, you're not really wanting to, you do have like the programmer or the level designer or the game designer's perspective for giving you, those simple adjectives. But if you were to try to get something and nail it like on the spot because you are pressed for time or whatnot, what do you do then for your iterative process? And what I've come to find out is having a good reference of sounds that you may respect from other games to then get a little more analytical with, whereas in like tools such as Isotope does, whereas you can do that whole spectrum analysis and find like how things sound and look visually as well as audibly, and trying to get close to the sounds that you're trying to recreate or do something different and deliver that in the best sense you can when those resources such as your colleagues are not available for the feedback, or maybe even the programmer or your team is not available for. That's where I was thinking, is like, if you are just really by yourself, as like you have been, Vince and Alex, sometimes, what do you do then? And how do you overcome that to get the best polished sound that you possibly can? Are references good for you? Or like for me, they've saved me a few times, but I'm sure not, like, maybe I'm not the only one in that process that's been there like a few times in that regard. So it's kind of, as Kyle would say, save my bacon.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I've never actually used references before. Maybe that's why the stuff that I do sounds so awful. No, no, I've never actually used references before. I think because I always find that, especially with game sound, it's so specific to the application. It's so specific to the game that you're making, the look of the game, the objective of the game, that references often, there's so much diversity, obviously, in references, and I find it difficult to sort of pin down what is it in this sound that I really want to take on for mine. So I tend not to use, especially like this is assuming the situation that you said, Chase, where it's a tight deadline, right? You don't have time. If you don't even have time to ask your colleagues what they think of your sound, that would, to me, that means it's probably like, you know, you have to have everything done in, like 4 or 6 hours. And if that's the case, I think what always helps for me is making sure that you try to plan in sort of rest time. I always find that if I have more than like 4 to 6 hours, if I have, you know, maybe 2 or 3 days to do something, doing it and then coming back the next day, it just sounds so totally different when you sort of give yourself time to sort of rest and just not hear it for a little while, come back and listen to it again. It's like, wow. It's usually, wow, that's terrible. I actually thought that would be possible, but it could also be, wow, that's perfect. You know, that I hear now the things that I wasn't hearing a moment ago. Just having a little bit of time to rest your ears, rest your mind, just put it aside for a moment. If you're able to schedule in that time into a tight schedule, that can be a great way to sort of self-criticize and to give yourself feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's really good advice. I think even beyond just resting your ears, also just changing up your monitoring environment can help a lot. You know, if I'm working on a game and I'm at my studio, I've got my speakers, which are nice speakers that I rely on. Oftentimes when you're asking your colleagues or, you know, other people on the dev team, hey, what do you think about this? They're not going to be using particularly nice speakers or maybe particularly nice headphones. Maybe they'll be using like, $10 headphones or the built-in speakers on their LCD monitors. And sometimes it's actually useful. Hey, I'm going to listen to it on this particular monitor that's in the office. Oh, my Dell monitor has these built-in speakers. Maybe I should plug it in and see how these guys are actually listening to it.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like anything that you can do to make you, like if you're working on a sound for an hour over and over and over and over again for 60 minutes, anything that you can do to make you forget what that sounds like. For example, give it a rest for a while, go for a walk, or listen to a piece of music and just completely lose yourself and forget what it was. As Vince said, try it out on your phone. Anything that you can do to sort of help you forget what it was that you were listening to for the past 60 minutes is a great way to sort of get new objectivity back into the process, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome. And Chase, you were mentioning those tools, like, you use an isotope tool and you can visualize it. Sometimes it's actually fun to think about, what is this sound supposed to do? And even beyond the actual sound of it, actually thinking about it visually. Okay, I know that this sound needs to complement this other sound. I know that the energy is going to be a little bit higher here, and this thing shouldn't necessarily distract from that sound. It's going to be simultaneously audible there, and just working purely in the visual space. You know, theoretically, that's possible. I've actually done that a couple of times with sounds that I just listened to forever. When I was working on Skullgirls, it was just punch sound after punch sound after punch sound. Just so many different iterations of it. And then after a while, I actually had a pretty decent amount of success, not actually listening to the punch sound. Just, okay, I'm processing and I'm monitoring it visually. And I'm actually doing things like looking at references, like you mentioned. Oh, this is what a King of Fighters punch sound looks like. Okay, maybe I'll think about that as I push this particular punch sound in this particular way, because I know that these devs are talking about how, what if it sounded a little more like this, you know, and they can't really describe it, but hey, I can visualize it and I can work in that visual manner and give my ears a rest and still make some real progress.
That's good that you touched on that. I know that like it's frowned upon to, you know, more use our ears as much as we can, but it's cool to know that visually, like, yes, we are using a different sense, one of our senses to turn off, so to speak, and let the other take over, just for the brevity of giving ourselves a refreshment.
Yeah,
with our ears.
Yep, it's really nice on all those tools. It's probably a good time to mention that. Yeah, Isotope. that was when I first got Isotope RX4, and that, wow, yeah, I got that in the middle of that project, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I was able to use my eyes instead of, well, I mean, I could use my eyes with other tools, the things that were built into Sonar, the stuff in SoundForge, really great tools, but all the different ways that you can visualize and edit the sound waveform in that different translation of the audio data. Isotope RX4 was really fantastic with it. And then I upgraded to RX5, and now there's all the new tools that they've got these days. So I just got to say, thank you, Isotope. Thank you for making some really awesome tools, and thank you for keeping on going. You're going to be going on for a while if you keep up with all these awesome tools that you have. So thank you, Isotope.
Do we?
Thank you.
Let's roll on to one of our other fascinating topics for today. Chase. Chase.
Well, how do you guys work between your DAWs?
There it is.
Yep.
There it is. He said the DAW word.
DAWs, yes. I mean, for me, it's actually pretty clear. You know, there are certain things that I use Reaper for, and there are certain things that I use Sonar for. You know, Reaper is a little bit faster for me if I'm doing a lot of this pure, you know, intricate sound effect work where I want to do some fun stuff with envelopes, where I want to do anything with dialogue. I typically do that stuff in Reaper. And then in Sonar, hey, I'm going to be doing my music stuff as well as my musical sound effects stuff. So there's kind of a clear line there. And it really wasn't anything where I even explored both of the DAWs perfectly before coming to that conclusion. I honestly just read what people were saying about both of the DAWs, and then I drew that line in the sand for myself. And I said, okay, I want to learn Reaper, so I'm going to do these things in Reaper. I know I want to maintain Sonar, so I'm going to do these things in Sonar. And they both happily coexist in my workflow. So it's a pretty clear answer for me. How about you guys?
I think that line between music and sound effects is probably fairly common for a lot of us. Sorry, I may have gone very, very dark. It's actually the morning here, but there's a thunderstorm going over at the moment. So
wow, that happened very fast.
Yeah, that's why they call it the rainy season. Anyway, I think that line between music and sound effects is fairly common. I use well, everybody knows what I use. I use yeah, I use I'm a tracker throwback. I just can't write music in anything else, really. It's just very hard. It's kind of a way of thinking that you get into with DAWs that after a while it's very hard to do it any other. I use Renoise for all the music that I do. A few projects ago, I did actually try using Renoise to do sound effects as well. Fun, because a tracker is basically an extremely functional sampler. Basically, it's basically one big sampler with a hardware style sequencing engine in it. So the kind of stuff that you can do with sample mangling in any kind of tracker program is replicate with other kinds of plugins or other DAWs. However, none of it is very visual. You're basically seeing everything in numbers rather than seeing waveforms. So there are times when seeing things in waveforms is much more intuitive and fast. And for those situations, that's generally sound effects. So I use either Reaper or Logic for sound effects. These last 3 projects that we've done, I've been actually trying out Logic for sound effects, which is sort of an unusual choice for doing sound effects. I'm not sure that many people would choose Logic for sound effects, especially over Reaper. But it's been interesting. Obviously, Logic has a whole bunch of very nice plugins that it comes with, and sort of the content library that you get with Logic is amazing. The amount of content you get just out of the box with Logic. And so if you're in a real hurry to do sound effects, especially musical sound effects that need different kinds of quick cues that have to be in really, really quickly, Logic is a great choice because it has all of the EXS instruments and it's got all of its synths and as well as all of the samples and loops and stuff that it comes with. So yeah, basically, like Vince, I draw the line at music and sound effects. Chase, how about you?
Most of Cubase, I do the music and the sound design in there sometimes, but I also am a fan of using SoundForge for some sound design stuff. Very, like, if I need to just do some really quick things, layer some things together, I don't feel like pulling out the dump of the pool to open a contact instance to get all creative with the sound design. SoundForge is a really good turnaround to just getting that knocked out right in the, you know. And also, for some reason, I find myself going back now to my very first DAW, which is Fruity Loops or FL Studio. And that's because I find that I can make chiptunes quicker, or 8-bit music a lot faster in that, because I know the waveforms. And I've learned the ways of the old styles, and I'm like, oh, I can just need my sine, my square, and my triangle, and I just need my noise channel, and I'm good to go. It's low on processing, and I'm having fun. Do not know the tracker yet because someone has not given me the demo yet. Will not say any names. They're on the show right now, but I won't say any names.
Vince, you just got to get around to doing that, Vince. You know, just
yeah. Well, you know what trackers are. It's not like every tracker is the same as every other tracker. I remember. I mean, this is a little bit of a while back, but I remember I used to do Scream Tracker 3 and Impulse Tracker. And nice. Then in the Windows era, people were saying, hey, you should try this thing called Mod Plug Tracker. And I remember trying to get into it, and I just thought, this sucks. And then another person was like, hey, we're doing some stuff in this game. Hey, we're using Fast Tracker, Fast Tracker 2. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down at Fast Tracker. And it felt like such a slog. You know, not all trackers are built the same. So
this is true. I'm learning this as I teach myself. Rookie Tracker is not the same as Impulse Tracker. And Renoise is a whole nother bunch of trackers. So you get like the special bells and whistles that they didn't have back then. So, but yeah, those are my three that I use.
I wanted to poke at something that you mentioned before, because SoundForge is not a DAW, but there is a particular workflow with sound effects there. I usually have everything go through SoundForge before it ever gets printed into the game. Whether it's music or sound effects or dialogue, everything goes through SoundForge. Certain things are different. Okay, I'm mastering music. Oh, I'm doing some user interface sound effects. I'm often going to be zooming in on different areas of that sound effect, and I am drawing with that pencil. I'm using my tablet, and I'm actually drawing that waveform, and I found that really, really useful. So I'm doing all that all the time.
Adobe Audition fills that role for me.
Yeah.
Throwback.
Yeah, I don't know that Adobe Audition is. I mean, I don't know how. I don't know that's that super great. But being that you get it with the Adobe Creative Cloud suite, and it's actually it does what it's designed to do quite well as an audio editor. That's what everything that I do goes through before it gets into the game.
I thought Adobe Audition was really good. The last one that I used was actually part of CS2, Creative Suite 2. And one of the funny things about this, and some people may know about this already, but helpful hint, Adobe CS2 is more or less freely downloadable. It's pretty old, and basically what Adobe did was they took down all the activation servers and services required for people to actually activate their copy of CS2. And because of that, people needed a way to still be able to use their copies of CS2. Well, long story short, you can basically download Adobe CS2 straight from Adobe, and you can use it. It is pretty old software. I guess it's close to a decade old now.
Yeah, it
But
is.
all that stuff there is very, very functional, including Adobe Audition. It's a really good piece of software. I know Adobe is not traditionally an audio company, but it's built on top of a really good platform of Cool Edit from back in the day. That Cool Edit has been around since SoundForge, competing with SoundForge back in the 90s. So there's a lot of good audio code that stuff is built on. So for the people that, so helpful hint.
I used to use Cool Edit 2.0.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's out there that's totally free. You know, some people know about things like Wavesaur or Audacity, but you know, Adobe Audition, a little old, but still very functional. Lots of really cool advanced features. There's actually a really good noise reduction built into Adobe Audition, and yeah, you can basically get it for free.
Yeah, I was actually
the noise reduction is very good.
Yeah.
Oh, go on. I was going to say that I was actually helping out a voiceover friend achieve an Overwatch simulation of like the style, and she did it pretty well, and the client was happy with. She did it with Adobe Audition, and that was one that I used way back in the day. Like Vincent said, it's a deep cut, Cool Edit 2.0, and I used to teach my mom how to record horror voiceovers on there and edit them, and not good for making music though. It's like MIDI and Pro Tools or something, like they just don't go well together.
Yeah, actually Jeff McMillan and Michael Hoffman in the chat room are saying, thinking about switching to Reaper for sound effects. I think it's important to mention the reason why Reaper is very useful for sound effects. I think any time that you have a process that can be automated or batched somehow, or just sort of something that's monotonous that involves you doing the same kind of action over and over again. For example, as Vince said, anything to do with voiceover stuff, character voices or voices. Like I remember that a while back we did a project for Sony where we had, it was like 8 characters with about something like 200 lines each, and we got the recordings of this sort of like one long recording. Basically, the job then was to sort of go through it and find the best takes, cut them out, slice them up, and prep them, put them through the same processing and the middleware, right? That's the kind of thing that Reaper does extremely well. Like that kind of, so you set up some shortcuts so you can do it quickly, and then you're basically just sort of chopping as you're going along, and then you add regions, and then you render them out as regions. Rather than rendering the whole thing and then chopping it up later. And it just going through that huge amount of work, it was really efficient and very quick, all thanks to Reaper's flexibility. So that's probably the reason why Reaper is such a great choice for any kind of complicated sound effects work.
Yeah. It is actually also really good for interactive music, at least the way that I use it. So even though I do use Cakewalk Sonar for most of my music, when I'm doing interactive implementation stuff, usually I'm doing it in the form of metadata and callback functions, which means I'm going to be embedding markers. And a lot of markers are going to be added in Reaper using their, they have something called the marker manager. And I just set up a lot of custom actions in order to add markers based on MIDI data that I've got. And, oh, okay, you've got a text marker in your MIDI data. I'm going to add a marker that's going to be exported with the WAV file into the game. And when the game, the audio playback hits that marker, we got a callback function so that you could do something like inform some existing sound effect about a new key that the music is in and immediately change its key and stuff like that. But all that stuff is just marker upon marker upon marker in the music stream. And I found that the Reaper marker manager is my favorite way of actually handling that, viewing it, and using actions to actually add those things intelligently based on the MIDI that actually made all the WAV files. So yeah, Reaper is used for my music workflow too.
Nice.
What was the yeah,
what?
Go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
So wasn't there was one other thing that we were going to. So we've got horizontal rain coming in the window at the moment. So I'm a
Oh,
bit
man.
distracted.
Bonds, dude, you were not joking. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear it. It's awesome. It's lovely.
Oh, I see. Here is the
Can you hear
question
it?
from Jazeria.
Yeah, I can.
Wow. Okay,
Oh,
so
for
now
the
I'm going
record,
to ask
before
that.
you go,
Oh,
that was your question, Vince. Working between multiple DAWs.
yes, that was. Yeah. So yes, I guess we were stuffing the question box, but here is an actual question from one of our listeners from last week. Hey, does it matter when it comes to getting work? How valued is a degree by potential employers, or is it really that much more about the connections? How much does it matter the degree versus having the portfolio or having the sheer hustle and drive? Let's see. Jazeria mentions a few specific programs, like Berkeley has been. Berkeley is obviously well known as both a music school as well as specifically for game audio and game music. How worth it is it to have that education? Man, that's a tough question, honestly. I feel kind of weird about that because I actually I do have a master's degree, although that master's is not in music. It's not in sound design at all. My master's degree was actually in game design, in interactive media for games and cinema. And part of that was actually me becoming better at game design and becoming a better programmer and doing all that fun stuff, and then letting my existing knowledge base of music and sound sort of mature as I was working on these other parts of my skill set. And then another part of working in that master's program was honestly building up those connections while I was working on that. Some of it was within school, and some of it was among other students at other programs, at UCLA, at UCI, just talking to those people. Man, so based on my own experience, I would say, wow, those connections are so important. And sometimes going for that master's degree is a viable way of getting those connections, but it's only a way. And if you have some very obvious things in front of you that basically point to you getting more connections, being more interconnected with people who are potential employers, maybe you don't have to spend the thousands, the few or many thousands of dollars that a master's program can cost.
True. Very true.
I think it's hard to discuss this topic without. You have to be very careful, obviously, because there are a lot of people out there who are in the midst of doing courses, and it's unfair to just say no, it's totally worthless, it's completely unnecessary, and you're wasting your money.
Drop out now.
Oh, it's absolutely true. Yeah, it is certainly none of these master's programs that I've seen or have been connected to are worthless. They're really wonderful, but you should also know exactly what are you getting out of it. I mean, one of the reasons that, for me, one of the things that pushed me over the edge when it came to do I want to do a master's program or not, is that I really do care about teaching. And having a master's or a doctorate is actually one of those things that's kind of a prerequisite when it comes to teaching on the university level. So I figured, okay, I'll go ahead and do that now. So that's what it is for me. There's a lot of value. How much do you value it, though? That's another story.
Yeah, for the company that I work for at the moment, which is Bethea Backroom, I'm also a producer, and I receive, not infrequently, I receive basically cold call style emails from people looking for work, and a lot of those are sound designers and composers. And if you assume that the minimum requirement is that you've got to be good at what you do, so if you say that you have somebody who has a degree and is good at what he or she does, and somebody who doesn't have a degree and is also good at what he or she does, so that's the minimum requirement. Everybody has that. Now you look at what else people are adding on. If you have a degree, but you don't have the other things that we might look for example, it's great to have somebody that has an interesting and diverse background. If you have somebody that's, come from, I am the ultimate sound designer. I've set my entire life, my passion, my dedication is only sound design, and that's all I know, and that's all I've done, and that's what I'm here to do. And there's kind of, the ultimate sound designer who lives and breathes sound design, but you look at what else they do and what else they're interested in and how much they get around as far as appreciation for different kinds of art, other kinds of areas of game design, not just games. Are they interested in other things as well? Are they interested in architecture, for example, or sculpture, or literature, or something like that? What's their breadth as an actual artist? That kind of person who has a lot of diversity in the way that they approach what they do is going to be, at least in our opinion, more appealing than somebody who's got the degree and they're good at what they do, because everybody is, but they got the degree and they're like fully focused on just doing this. My mission is to be the world's greatest sound designer. I think that having a degree, having a degree is kind of irrelevant in that situation, because it depends more on what else you bring beyond just your skill. So it could be the other thing that you bring is that I've met you, for example, right? That we have met and that I like you because I've gotten to know your character. That could be something else that you're bringing. Or it could be, like I said, a broad sort of diversity of appreciation for different kinds of art and an understanding of process and concept for different kinds of artistic pursuits. That could be something else you're bringing. Or it could be you don't have a degree, but you have a laser focus on this specific kind of sound design or the specific kind of music. You are the world's greatest, rock game music composer, and you only make rock music, but you do it extremely well. That could be something else that you're bringing. So, I guess the degree then becomes less of a necessity. What it does give you is a reason and an opportunity to be doing a lot of practice in your craft and getting, good feedback from professionals. You can get that in other ways. You can, if you have excellent willpower and great determination, you can sit down and do something without a course making you do it. And you can get critical feedback from, friends and other colleagues, as we discussed earlier in the show. But a degree kind of sets that up for you very conveniently. So in that sense, it's very, very useful. But then, yes, as I said, is it completely necessary? No, not really. It depends on what else you're bringing to the table beyond just your excellent skill level. What's so funny?
It's just because, like, is it necessary? No, not really. I just found that. I'm just like, nah.
I'm actually just thinking about another aspect of this. And Alex, a quick question, sort of as a preamble. Since you mentioned that you're a producer, have you ever had to work with another musician or sound designer in a contract fashion? And
yes,
does working with contract music composers and sound designers, what do you feel about that versus a composer or sound designer working in an in-house fashion? Does that change how you might look at that equation?
Yes, it does. I guess if you work in a small company, you'll be more focused on things like versatility. Whereas if you're looking at a contractor, you'd be, at least in my view, you're focusing on a specific thing that they do very, very well. Mm-hmm. For example, if I have like a group of contractors that I can go to, if I need this kind of music, if I need this kind of feel, if I need, this style of sound effects, or that's something that you want the contractor to be extremely obvious. This is what I do, and this is what I do extremely well. Whereas somebody who's applying for an in-house job, I've never had the privilege of working in a company that has the funding for more than one full-time sound person. So I've never had the experience of hiring somebody for a full-time position. So it's hard to really say, but I guess if we had that opportunity, I'd be looking for, again, that interesting person who has a diverse background, diverse appreciation, and is fairly flexible in what they can do.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on my own answer, and I realized that, yeah, I have hired sound designers designers, both in a contract capacity as well as in-house full-time. And I realize for the contract sound designers, I really wasn't thinking as much about that diversity of their skill sets or that their personality and the rapport that we might have, and the breadth of their interests. I really wasn't thinking about that as much versus when I was hiring for this in-house position. Oh man, that's actually really important. Hey, we got this person who has this degree and he's worked on these projects that are actually really disparate. Some of them were actually within the context of a very large school program, and then some of them were outside personal projects, and then some of them were beyond that. So yeah, I mean, I can, and I don't want to simplify it down to, hey, if you're contracting, maybe you don't need to think about a master's or other sort of certificate program for music or games or whatnot. But if you are thinking about doing something, pursuing a career where you're an in-house guy at a company, whether small or large, I can't help but think that maybe a master's or certificate program could actually be beneficial. But yeah, maybe I will say that. Maybe I will say that just to say it.
Yeah, I think that that personality side, even if it's a contractor, me personally, that's really, really important. I have to like the people that I'm going to be working with, because it gets stressful. You rub against each other, even if it's a contractor, even if it's something as simple as, I need these music cues by this date and I'm going to give you this much money. If it's somebody that you can feel that you enjoy working with, and that is not only professional and flexible and those things, but also friendly, personable, and somebody that you just get along very well with, it just makes the whole, it's like a small part of the whole picture that, game development is stressful, especially if you're in production. It's extremely stressful. And if you have people that you are, reliable people that you can say, oh, I'm actually looking forward to giving this person a contract, because I know that, I really like them, and it's going to be great, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to do some great work together. That to me feels much better than, well, here's this guy, he's really cold, he's not very nice, but he gets the job done and he does a very good job by the date with this amount of money. I think I'd rather work with somebody that I can feel eager to sort of, do something together with, even if it's sort of a cut and dry contractual situation.
Yeah, that sounds great. Chase, you haven't spoken too much. What do you think about this?
So my perspective on it was voiced a little bit before, but you guys have given me some interesting points to talk about now, which is one, when I was getting started, I was in this pickle where I wanted to have an in-house job and they were available back, 7 years ago, but I didn't have a degree, and it said must have a degree or equal to 5 years of experience. Well, I have that degree and I have 5 years at the same time, because I decided to do both. I decided to figure out how I could get into the indie scene and get projects done. And Jaziri's question, which is like, does it come down to like the projects and the hustle? It can or it can't. And I really think that it depends on what studio you are going to apply to that is looking for, like what Alex says, like, is this a character, or is it looking for, just like a thing that you can do and do well? If you do your research and your homework about the studio that you're applying to, you'll be able to discern and figure out if that is a good fit for you right off the bat, normally, before you even apply, because you can understand the culture just a tiny bit before you meet the people in the team that are there. But it will give you a better general sense of, hey, they respect hustlers, or in this case, they respect, learned folks who have degrees from USC or, I mean, School of Video Game Audio or Berkeley or wherever like it comes from. And with that, yes, you'll always have connections if you go to school, no matter what. Those are the people that are there. Those are the people that you grow with, your peers, your colleagues, and those people grow outside of the industry as well. So school is always going to be beneficial to you there. But when it comes down to getting a job, I think that it really just comes down to your research or who you're applying to. It's like you were saying, Alex, like you get some cold calls with things and you really have to filter through like, hey, I've at least met you before. Do I like you? do we work well together? And you mentioned something that is a very, very key word and something that we do in this industry, and I cannot mention it enough. It's super salient, is fun. Fun. We forget to have fun. What we do, this is game audio, for crying out loud. Game audio. we have fun together while we're in the trenches, and crunching, God forbid, or working leisurely on the product to ship on time. Are we having fun? And I think that's what it comes down to overall. So some employers I know do look for those degrees, and some employers, like you were saying, Vince, you didn't really necessarily look for the scenes of where they came from. You're just thinking like, hey, could they get the job done? Are they doing it right and whatnot and so forth, as opposed to, the latter. So I think those things are important, but I don't know where I stand on it completely. I just think that people just need to do their homework very, very well, because that's where my experience is. And because there aren't many schools, you were talking about sound designers, and I don't know, there are more sound design school now for game audio, but what about back in the 90s? Like, that didn't exist. What about in the early 2000s? That really wasn't a lot, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Or, you can go to school for music, but for game audio, like, they're just now happening.
That's true. A lot of the guys if they had schooling for game audio, maybe it was in the form of, they went through a film production program, and then they focused on film editing, and their focus while doing film editing was actually very much on sound. Okay, so there are some sound designers that did that, and that was their schooling. But yeah, now we're finally starting to get this focus, and oh man, getting really hardcore into the technology of sound, whether from a hardware standpoint or a software standpoint, and new theories when it comes to utilizing all this sound in a musical capacity, or building modern musical instruments, and those instruments actually become the paradigms for, hey, what might be a new API that we're going to be using within some game for the PlayStation 5. Who knows?
Actually, sorry, do you want to finish there? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was going to say that Adriano has a very interesting question in the chat room. He says, when looking for contractors, how important is it that they are somewhat local, even if they are working remotely? What's your answer to that, Vince?
Ooh, that is tough. I'm honestly still trying to figure out how I work with that. I'm actually right now working with a contractor in Florida, and I used to work with a contractor that was in SoCal, and then he went to another part of America, and we were working together that way. Man, it really depends. How is the workflow going to work? I think the thing that I have learned is that I need to know how I'm actually going to work with a person, and with each individual person, it can be really quite different. I guess going back to what you were saying, Alex, about that rapport and how exactly that actually manifests itself, and being able to learn a person, even if it is a contractor, yeah, it is worth learning a person, and that informs the process, that informs the workflow. So far, working with this person in Florida has been really great. It took about 2 weeks to sort of really get to that point, but those 2 weeks were well spent, because now things are going great.
Yeah, for me, it's not important at all where they're located. In fact, I like the idea of having people from completely different places contributing to a project contractually, because it adds, again, an extra interesting layer of diversity to the whole thing. I'm a bit of a believer that your environment has a small amount of influence on your artistic output. Maybe large for some people, but if you have everybody working on your game projects, everybody lives 10 minutes from your office, for example, right? Or even worse, everybody lives in your office. If it's like a really sort of small local kind of thing like that, you may get a result that's extremely focused in a specific sort of artistic flavor, because these people are all influenced by the same things in the same society, the same lifestyle or similar lifestyle. I think that games can always benefit from people who come from, if you have people in completely different places, you may get somebody in Iceland, and you may get somebody in South America, and you may get somebody in, Singapore, and then you get somebody in like Europe. And, if that kind of situation, if you live in Singapore, the kind of work that you're going to do there's a small amount of it that's going to come from the environment that you live in, as opposed to if you live in like Brazil, and again, the same thing, there's going to be some influence from that environment and the culture that you live in every day. And that, I think, at least in the things that we do, that's really exciting. If you can be bringing that as well, then that's something that I get really excited about. So from my point of view, it's not important that they're somewhat local.
Yeah, I think it's kind of nice just being able to work with all these people that are not a little bit of that flavor. I think the hardest thing is if you are working with someone that is in another country and English is not their first language, it's a little bit tough. But that's actually a whole separate thing. It is kind of nice to have that little bit of that flavor. I like to think that for some of these contractors that we've worked with that have come, or actually there was one person from Singapore. There's a little bit of that flavor, and it helps everyone. I haven't really had the opportunity to work with that many contractors. I'm reflecting back on my experience working with a really big art team, and they had lots of contractors from all over the world, and they would regularly talk about how awesome it was to get this person from Spain because he had an amazing style. And even though he was working to a style guide that was established by the art director, that little bit that he has that's different, that comes from that comes from his environment, that's enough to have a really strong positive influence and get people, I'm really looking forward to that email that comes in, to those attachments that come with that email, because that's exciting.
Yeah, and at Vitae Backroom, we're really lucky. We have like an American, somebody from Sweden, somebody from Finland, and some Australians, some British people, somebody from France. I think that's it. So, in a small group of 10, where you have no more than 2 people from the same country, there's only 1 American, there's 2 Australians. The rest of everybody's from a different country. Like international diversity in any kind of collaborative creative work is always a good thing. Sometimes, there's issues with work ethic, and there's issues with differences, obviously cultural differences. One interesting thing that comes up every now and then is a difference in sense of humor. And that's really interesting, because for people from different countries find different things funny, and more importantly, find different things not funny. So, you may get, for example, Australians and British people finding the same thing funny that, like somebody from America just, what are you guys laughing about? That's not funny at all. That sometimes comes up every now and then, but it's that's only a small problem compared to the massive benefit that you get from just such diversity in people's opinions and people's outlooks and just some general appreciation. So yeah, I love it. So therefore, when I'm looking for contractors, if you're from South America, or if you're from somewhere else than where we are, then that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've only been on the contractee side, like for this year when I was working with some musicians, but when I was a contractee, one of them was local, and it was good because we were on the same time zone. But the other times, like I remember being on a big team where there were people from South America, and there was people from England and America and as well. Whereas then we had a meeting every Saturday at 12 Pacific time, at least my time. But that would be like, I don't know, 3 a.m. in England time somewhere. You know what I mean? Like it's just like all over the place. And so people cannot we're not on the same accord, especially if we miss certain things. But other than that, it it went together well. I mean, thanks to technology, right? Because we have SVN servers where we can push our assets to and communicate through Slack channels and other ways of communication where we don't have to be on a video call every Saturday at 12 because that's just really inconvenient. But other than that, it really does. It is pretty copacetic normally, as you guys were saying. So that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah.
Let's see. Adriano in the chat room says, as a contractor, I tend to get much better feedback and communication from the local companies he works for. As we all know, describing sound and musical ideas can be tricky. And yeah, that's true. If they are local, that it can be easier to get that feedback. I guess if you're local, that often means that you've met face to face at one time or maybe multiple times over the course of what is otherwise a remote contract gig. And just that bit can help out a lot. And yeah, describing sound and music ideas can be really tough. That's really true. Often, I think one thing that I do, or I used to do this more when I was that guy that was working via email. I suppose I would probably be doing the same thing in Slack, but I'm going to spend a whole lot less time working in text and just, okay, well, I'm going to iterate fast. And all right, you want this musical idea? This is what I'm parsing your thoughts as. It becomes this MP3. You know, nothing is much clearer than that, honestly. You know, hey, this is what it sounds like. Yeah, once, you know, text can only be so clear, and yeah, it has to be translated. You know, going back to what you were saying earlier, you know, every person that has their own particular ideas on music and sound, it's got to be translated a particular way in order for you to actually appropriately act on that and create a cool piece of music or a cool piece of sound. So
yeah. I think I've said this before on Game Audio, but when I used to do industrial design, the lead designer always had this great advice. He says, if you ask the client what they want and they say that they want it red, don't make it red. You got to think what is it that makes them say that they want it red, and then address that. It's not just about making it red to make it happy for them. So it's the same when people says, oh, this sound is, you know, I want it more bassy. Doesn't mean just like, you know, bump the 60 hertz and you're good to go. It's actually, you know, what is it that makes them think that it's not heavy enough? You know, what is there a way that I can address what they're asking for? I mean, it's not about avoiding what they're asking for. Sometimes it may be as simple as just throwing in a low shelf and you're good to go. But in certain situations where you're thinking, that's ridiculous. Why would this need to be more bassy? This person must be completely amateur and they have no idea what they're talking about. Not necessarily the case. You know, they feel that way, and that's undisputable. So that then, you know, the issue just becomes, okay, well then, to address that feeling, maybe it's not necessarily about adding more bass. What is the root of the problem, and what is it that they're actually feeling that makes them produce that result? And then addressing that. So that's what I meant by translation.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You know, what it is they want versus is very different, or it can be very different from what it is they say they want. So yeah. Oh wow. So that seems like we got through a whole bunch of stuff that hour, a little bit more than an hour. I really wanted to end by talking about some games because I know that's something. I got a chance to play some games, so I just wanted to say, Bomberman is cool. Bomberman on the Nintendo Switch is actually a really good game. I don't know what the bad reviews are talking about. It is legit fun. How about you guys?
Games?
Yeah, games. Have you had a chance to play some games?
Metal Warriors for the SNES.
Oh, wow, Metal Warriors, yeah.
It's great.
Ow.
It's great. It's a really great sort of heavy mech game that sort of, there's so many little things in there that sort of make you think, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's a neat little thing. Oh, wow. Well, check that out. That's good. Sorry, that's probably not the answer that you were wanting. I think you're wanting something a bit more.
No, any game is totally fine. Great. Any game is, trust me.
Also, like, hold on. Wait, how old are you, Chase, now?
I'm 29.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, what's older, Metal Warriors or Chase? So almost. I didn't know I was 25 years old. And hey, Chase, what are you playing?
Well, tonight, actually, after the show, I'm gonna be playing some Heavenly Sword. I'm gonna be playing some Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, and I'm gonna be playing some Dragon Ball Z Battle of Z. As well, I've been playing Breath of the Wild. I just got back into that. I took like a month or two off because I had to get things together and done. But I'm almost done with that game. But yeah, I'm still playing a lot. And
where do you guys get
really
all the time? Where do you get the time to play all these games? Well, the only games I get to play these days is the ones that we're making, which is not great. But
I can't say that.
I feel you on that. I mean, the only reason that I've been able to play this Switch for a bit is because I had a forced exile from work in the form of wedding and honeymoon. So, I have some time. I'm not supposed to think about work. I'll play a video game. That's cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
the problem, I think, because we do VR games, and playing VR games in development, it's
yeah.
It hurts. It hurts.
It's the adjective that we use is chunderous.
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 I like that word.
Yeah, especially low frame rate VR game development. It's
Oh my god.
Can't recommend it. So it sort of puts you off life in general, really.
I'm assuming that your workplace has hardwood floors then.
Yeah, nice and easily cleanable, you mean? Nice,
yes, exactly what I meant.
Mop it up. It's let's not talk about what I think about VR games. Anyways,
yeah, I have to play for research, so that's where I get the time. The games I'm working on, I need some references, like I was saying.
References. There's that word again. It's wrapping it right around. Beautiful.
Yeah,
those are some tech sneaks for you for the day. Nice
quality there. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for Game Audio Hour episode 144. Check us out on Twitter. You can tweet at us over there if you have any questions. Check us out on Facebook. Like us. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye now.
Bye.